The arrival of the celestial monarch. Queen the Lyra stood at the helm of her flagship, the Celestial Dawn, gazing out through the vast crystalline viewport at the vibrant blue planet below. Earth, an unassuming world teeming with life yet blissfully unaware of its impending doom. Her iridescent features glimmered with anticipation as she adjusted her ceremonial crown, its weight a constant reminder of her 98 successful conquests across the galaxy. "Your Majesty," announced Commander Jax from his station at the tactical console. His multiple eyes blinked in unison as he monitored their approach. "Our scouts report that this planet is inhabited by a species known as humans. They appear to be bipedal mammals with limited technological advancement." The Lyra chuckled softly, a sound that resonated through the bridge like a melodic chime. "Primitive creatures with no psychic abilities? How quaint." She leaned back in her throne-like seat, a smirk playing across her lips. "What do they even do for entertainment? I can only imagine their crude amusements." Jax cleared his throat. "They have yet to colonize their moon properly and rely heavily on outdated energy sources." His voice was laced with incredulity as he continued scrolling through data on his console. "They even engage in something called reality television." "Reality television?" The Lyra echoed, raising an eyebrow. "What a fascinating concept. Perhaps we should capture some specimens for our galactic zoo once we conquer them." Her laughter filled the room as her crew exchanged nervous glances. They were all too familiar with her unpredictable moods. "Your Majesty," Lieutenant Kira interjected cautiously from the sensor station. "We are detecting significant quantities of nuclear weapons on the surface." The Lyra waved a dismissive hand. "Nuclear weapons? How charming. I remember when my people went through that phase approximately 12 million years ago." She floated gracefully across the bridge as if weightless, her bioluminescent markings shimmering in hues of blue and green. "Begin standard pre-invasion protocol," she commanded with authority. "Hack into their communication networks and broadcast our demands in all their languages." She paused thoughtfully before adding, "And someone fetch me one of their local beverages, something called a pumpkin spice latte." "Yes, Your Majesty," Jax replied dutifully while Kira prepared to execute the orders. As they descended toward Earth's atmosphere, the Lyra couldn't shake an unsettling feeling creeping into her mind. This would be her 998th conquest, a feat that should have thrilled her, but something felt different this time. Perhaps it was just nerves. After all, she had faced down plasma storms and negotiated with sentient black holes before. The celestial dawn breached the atmosphere with a brilliant flash of light that illuminated the sky like a shooting star. As they approached their landing site, an elementary school playground, the Lyra envisioned chaos erupting around them, children screaming and military forces scrambling to respond to their invasion. Instead, as the ship's landing thrusters kicked up clouds of dust and scattered jump ropes across the playground, she was greeted by an unexpected sight, a solitary boy swinging lazily on a swing set. "Whoa! Cool spaceship," exclaimed Ethan Anderson, an 11-year-old boy with tousled hair and braces that sparkled in the sunlight. He squinted up at the massive ship as it settled down beside him. Thalira's grand entrance faltered momentarily as she processed this bizarre encounter. Where were the terrified crowds? The brave military defenders? Instead, she found herself face to face with a child who seemed more interested in his surroundings than in her imposing presence. "Does it have cup holders?" Ethan asked innocently while continuing to swing back and forth. The Lyra blinked rapidly in disbelief. "Foolish Earth child," she declared dramatically as she stepped down from her crystalline landing ramp, trying to regain some semblance of authority. "You stand in the presence of Queen the Lyra, conqueror of 98 worlds. Destroyer of suns. Supreme ruler of the Celestial Empire." Ethan tilted his head curiously but didn't seem intimidated at all. "That's cool and all," he replied nonchalantly, "but I'm just trying to enjoy my lunch." He held up a slightly squished peanut butter and banana sandwich. Lunch? The Lyra repeated incredulously. You dare bring food before me? Ethan shrugged casually while munching on his sandwich. It's just lunch. My mom always packs extra because she says I'm a growing boy. Commander Jax stepped forward cautiously behind the Lyra as he consulted his quantum tablet nervously. Your Majesty, he stammered, our database indicates this is a common Earth food item often served to their young. Battle food? The Lyra scoffed while trying to maintain an air of superiority despite feeling increasingly perplexed by this strange encounter. No dude, Ethan replied with a grin as he hopped off the swing. It's just lunch. But seriously about those cup holders. The Lyra felt herself losing control over this situation rapidly. Where was the fear she had expected? This child seemed entirely unfazed by her presence or intentions. As Commander Jax tried to regain control over his own confusion while scanning data on his tablet about human behavior patterns, the Lyra found herself staring at Ethan's innocent face, wondering how such a small creature could possibly be so unafraid when faced with imminent doom. You are not afraid? She finally asked him directly. Ethan shrugged again as if it were no big deal. Should I be? You look kind of like that coral stuff we saw at the aquarium last month except bigger and cooler. The Lyra felt an unfamiliar sensation wash over her, a mix between annoyance and intrigue at this human boy who seemed completely unfazed by everything she represented. Before she could respond further or regain control over her royal demeanor entirely, something unexpected happened. A small furry creature darted out from Ethan's pocket and began sniffing around curiously. Mr. Squeakers! Ethan exclaimed excitedly as he bent down to pet his hamster who had seized upon an opportunity for exploration amidst this strange encounter. The Lyra watched in disbelief as this small creature boldly approached her majestic form without fear or hesitation, something completely unheard of during any previous conquest. Is that a battle beast? The Lyra asked incredulously while trying hard not to laugh at how ridiculous everything felt now. Nah, Ethan replied casually while scratching Mr. Squeakers behind his ears affectionately before turning back toward the Lyra again with genuine curiosity shining brightly in his eyes once more, something she hadn't seen since arriving on this planet filled with so much potential chaos ahead. As laughter bubbled up within her chest despite herself at how absurdly different this encounter was compared to all others before it, the Queen found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about conquering worlds, and perhaps even about what it truly meant to rule over them too. Little did either realize that this unexpected meeting would set off a chain reaction that would change not only their lives but also shape destinies far beyond either could ever imagine. The unexpected encounter. Ethan Anderson stood in the middle of the playground, his peanut butter and banana sandwich clutched tightly in one hand while the other absently petted Mr. Squeakers, his beloved hamster. The dust from the landing of the celestial dawn had settled, but the atmosphere was still charged with an odd mix of excitement and confusion. He couldn't quite wrap his head around the fact that an alien queen had just landed in front of him. Are you okay? Ethan asked, noticing that Queen the Lyra was hovering a few feet off the ground, her bioluminescent markings flickering in disarray. You look kind of colorful. The Lyra was trying to regain her composure, but her regal demeanor was slipping away as she felt an uncomfortable sensation in her throat. The peanut butter from the sandwich she had just tasted was wreaking havoc on her system. I am not. I am fine, she sputtered, but her voice came out as a strangled croak. Uh-oh, Ethan said with a hint of concern. You really don't look fine. He took a step closer, curiosity overcoming his initial hesitation. Do you need some water or something? Water? The Lyra echoed incredulously. I am a queen. I do not require your primitive liquids. But even as she spoke, she felt another sneeze building up inside her. Rax, she called out to Commander Jax, who was still trying to process this bizarre situation. What is happening to me? Your Majesty, Jax replied nervously, glancing at his tablet, which was displaying a series of alarming readings. It appears you may be experiencing an allergic reaction to the substance you ingested. An allergic reaction? The Lyra exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch as panic began to set in. To a mere Earth food? This is unacceptable. Ethan watched as the Lyra's markings shifted from their usual elegant purple to a frantic shade of green. Dude, are you allergic to peanuts? He asked, his eyes wide with realization. Of course not. The Lyra insisted, though her body was betraying her words as she floated higher into the air, struggling to maintain control over her royal composure. Your Majesty! Jax shouted, trying to regain command. We need to contact the fleet. We must initiate orbital bombardment. The Lyra interrupted, her voice now almost panicked. No. I can't let them destroy this playground. There are children here. Ethan stepped forward cautiously. Hey, it's okay. I have some allergy medicine in my backpack. He rummaged through his bag and pulled out a small bottle labeled Allergy Relief. This stuff works for my cousin Bradley when he eats something he's not supposed to. The Lyra hesitated for a moment, torn between her pride and the very real discomfort she was feeling. The thought of taking medicine from a human child was absurd, it went against every protocol she had ever known. But then again, she was floating in midair and hiccuping rainbow bubbles. Fine, she relented finally, floating down closer to Ethan's level but still maintaining an air of authority. But if this fails, I will hold you personally responsible for my demise. Ethan grinned widely and handed over the bottle. Just take 1 or 2 of these and you should feel better. The Lyra uncapped the bottle with an elegant flick of her wrist and poured 2 capsules into her palm. She eyed them suspiciously before swallowing them whole without water, a choice that made Ethan wince slightly. Now what? He asked eagerly. Now we wait, the Lyra replied tersely, crossing her arms and attempting to project an image of calm superiority despite the chaos brewing within her. As they stood there in silence, a queen and a boy, Jax continued to monitor the situation from behind them. The elite guards were still on high alert while exchanging glances filled with confusion and disbelief. You know, Ethan said suddenly, breaking the silence, if you really wanted to conquer Earth, you might want to try a different approach. The Lyra raised an eyebrow at him. And what would that be? A more diplomatic approach? Perhaps I should invite your leaders for tea? Well, Ethan began thoughtfully while scratching Mr. Squeaker's behind his ears, you could try being less, well, scary? You know? Maybe show people that aliens aren't all bad? The Lyra scoffed lightly but found herself intrigued by this unexpected perspective. You think I should simply waltz into your cities with open arms and offer friendship instead of fear? Why not? Ethan shrugged nonchalantly as if it were the most obvious solution in the universe. I mean, everyone loves cool aliens. You could be like a celebrity or something. Thalira's mind raced at this idea, could it be possible? Instead of destruction and conquest, perhaps there was another way forward? But before she could respond further or contemplate this radical shift in strategy, she felt another sneeze coming on. No, she exclaimed desperately as she tried to suppress it but failed miserably. The sneeze erupted from her mouth like a sonic blast that sent nearby jump ropes flying into the air. Ethan burst into laughter at the sight of this powerful alien queen sneezing uncontrollably while surrounded by bewildered guards who were trying hard not to react. Okay, he chuckled between breaths. That was pretty epic. The Lyra couldn't help but feel a sense of embarrassment wash over her. Never had she imagined that an invasion could lead to such ridiculous moments, especially not involving sneezes or laughter from a human child. Perhaps, she conceded reluctantly after regaining some composure, there is merit in your suggestion. Ethan's eyes lit up with excitement as he realized he had struck a chord with this alien queen who had come here with intentions of conquest but now seemed open to discussion. So what will you do next? He asked eagerly. I will consider my options, the Lyra replied slowly while glancing back at Jax and their elite guards who were still processing everything happening around them. Jax finally found his voice again and stepped forward cautiously. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "if we are going to change our approach, we need to gather more information about these humans." "Yes," Ethan chimed in enthusiastically. "I can help. I know all about Earth stuff, like video games and movies and science fairs." The Lyra looked at him skeptically but couldn't deny that having someone like Ethan around might prove beneficial after all, not only for gathering intel but also for understanding these creatures who seemed so different yet oddly relatable. "Very well then," the Lyra declared with newfound determination as she floated back down onto solid ground beside Ethan. "Let us begin our research together." And so began an unexpected alliance between Queen the Lyra and an 11-year-old boy, a partnership that would challenge everything they both believed about each other's worlds while setting off a chain reaction destined to change their fates forever. A clash of worlds. The playground was filled with an unusual tension as Queen the Lyra floated above the ground, her bioluminescent markings flickering in distress. Below her, Ethan stood with a mix of curiosity and concern, while Commander Jax and the elite guards exchanged bewildered glances. The scene felt surreal: an alien queen, a child with a peanut butter sandwich, and a hamster that had somehow become the center of this bizarre encounter. "Your Majesty," Jax finally managed to say, his voice breaking through the chaos. "We must assess the situation. This is unprecedented." Thalira's third eye twitched uncontrollably as she tried to regain her composure. I am not panicking," she insisted, though her voice was strained. "This is merely a tactical maneuver to confuse my enemies." Ethan couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of this powerful queen struggling to maintain her dignity while floating erratically. "You're doing that thing again," he pointed out. "You know, the one where you look like you just drank too much soda." "Enough," the Lyra snapped, though her tone lacked any real authority. "You think this is amusing, Earth child? I am a conqueror. I have faced down the most formidable foes across the galaxy." "Yeah, but none of them probably offered you a sandwich," Ethan countered, his grin widening. "Maybe that's where you went wrong." Thalira's eyes narrowed as she contemplated his words. Was it possible that this simple act of sharing food could hold some deeper significance? She had always relied on fear and intimidation to assert her dominance, yet here she was, disarmed by a child and a sandwich. "Commander Jax," she commanded, trying to regain some semblance of authority, "analyze this situation. Why are we unable to communicate with the fleet?" Jax's multiple eyes darted across his tablet as he frantically tapped commands. "It appears our quantum communications are being disrupted by some form of interference originating from this playground," he reported, his voice laced with urgency. "Interference?" the Lyra echoed incredulously. "From what? A mere child and his pet?" "Perhaps it's something more," Jax suggested cautiously. "The energy signatures from your reaction might be causing a feedback loop in our systems." Ethan watched as the Lyra's expression shifted from annoyance to contemplation. "So you're saying my sandwich caused your ship to malfunction?" he asked innocently. "It's not your sandwich," the Lyra retorted, though there was an undeniable hint of uncertainty in her voice. "It's your planet's primitive technology." Just then, Mr. Squeakers chose that moment to scurry back toward Ethan after finishing off the remnants of Thalira's sandwich. The tiny hamster paused and looked up at the alien queen with wide eyes as if sensing the tension in the air. "See?" Ethan said, pointing at Mr. Squeakers. "Even he thinks you should lighten up." The Lyra took a deep breath, attempting to compose herself amidst the absurdity of it all. She realized that perhaps there was more to these humans than she had initially thought. This boy was unlike any other creature she had encountered during her conquests. "Tell me," the Lyra said slowly, her tone softening slightly as she floated down closer to Ethan's level. "What do you humans value? What drives you? Ethan blinked in surprise at the question but quickly recovered. Well, we like fun stuff. Like playing games and hanging out with friends. And science fairs are pretty cool too. They let us show off our projects. Science fairs? The Lyra repeated curiously. Yeah. It's where we present our experiments and ideas, Ethan explained enthusiastically. I'm working on one about how music affects hamster behavior. The Lyra found herself intrigued by this notion. Perhaps there was merit in understanding these creatures beyond mere conquest. If humans valued creativity and connection over fear and domination, maybe there was a different approach she could take. Commander Jax, she said thoughtfully, turning back toward him while still keeping an eye on Ethan. What if we were to observe these science fairs? It could provide valuable insights into their culture. Jax looked taken aback by the suggestion but quickly composed himself. Your Majesty, are you suggesting we abandon our invasion plans? I am suggesting we explore alternative methods for engagement, the Lyra replied firmly but without malice in her tone. Ethan beamed at her response. That would be awesome. You could meet all my friends. We could show you how cool Earth is. The Lyra hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. Perhaps this would also provide her an opportunity to gather intelligence without resorting to destruction. Very well, she declared with newfound determination. We shall attend this science fair together. Ethan jumped up and down excitedly while Mr. Squeakers squeaked in agreement from his pocket. The elite guards exchanged glances filled with disbelief. They had been trained for years for combat scenarios but never for an interspecies science fair. Your Majesty, Jax interjected cautiously, trying to steer them back on course, this is highly unorthodox. I am aware. The Lyra snapped back but softened her tone quickly when she saw Ethan's hopeful expression. Let us proceed with this plan, she said decisively. But know this, if I find any evidence of treachery or deceit among your kind. I promise we're not plotting anything. Ethan interrupted earnestly while raising his hands defensively. The Lyra studied him closely. There was sincerity in his eyes that made her pause for thought once more about what it meant to rule over a world filled with such varied beings. As they began discussing logistics for attending the science fair, what costumes they might wear or how they would present themselves, the Lyra felt an unfamiliar sensation creeping into her heart, hope. Perhaps this unexpected alliance could lead to something greater than conquest, a chance for understanding between their worlds that had never existed before. Little did they know that their journey together would not only reshape their destinies but also challenge the very fabric of what it meant to be a conqueror and a friend. The power of friendship. The playground was now a scene of utter chaos, but it was not the kind of chaos Queen Nara had envisioned when she first planned her invasion. Instead of military might and terror, she found herself floating in mid-air, hiccuping rainbow bubbles and feeling utterly ridiculous while a human child rummaged through his backpack for allergy medicine. Do not approach me with more earth substances. Nara commanded, her voice strained as she tried to maintain her regal demeanor. But the effect was somewhat diminished by the colorful bubbles that continued to escape her lips. Ethan, undeterred by the Queen's protests, pulled out a small bottle labeled allergy relief. Seriously, it might help. My cousin Bradley says it works wonders. He held it up like a trophy, his eyes wide with excitement. Your Majesty, Commander Rax interjected nervously as he observed the scene unfold. Perhaps we should reconsider our strategy. The child seems to possess a unique understanding of human biology. Nara's third eye twitched as she felt another sneeze building. I am not in need of assistance from a mere child, she insisted, though deep down, she felt a flicker of desperation. The peanut butter sandwich had thrown her off balance in ways she never imagined possible. Look, Ethan said earnestly, if you want to conquer Earth, you've got to be able to handle our food. This is just lunch. It's not a weapon. Nara hesitated for a moment, caught between her pride and the reality of her situation. She had faced plasma storms and negotiated with sentient black holes, yet here she was, defeated by a sandwich and an 11-year-old boy. Fine, she relented, floating down closer to Ethan. But if this fails, I will hold you personally responsible for my demise. With that, Ethan handed over the bottle of allergy medicine. Nara examined it suspiciously before uncapping it and pouring the contents into her mouth. The taste was surprisingly sweet and refreshing compared to the remnants of the sandwich still lingering on her tongue. Now what? Ethan asked eagerly. Now, we wait, Nara replied cautiously as she felt the effects of the medicine begin to take hold. Slowly but surely, her bioluminescent markings began to shift back to their usual elegant purple hue. As the tension in the air dissipated slightly, Ethan took a step back and looked up at Nara with genuine curiosity. So, what's it like being a queen? Do you have to wear that crown all the time? Nara blinked in surprise at the question. Being a queen is complicated, she admitted slowly. There are expectations to uphold and conquests to achieve. Sounds boring, Ethan replied bluntly. I mean, who wants to spend their life conquering planets? Don't you ever just want to hang out and have fun? Nara found herself taken aback by his honesty. Fun? It had been centuries since she had allowed herself to experience anything resembling fun. Her life had been consumed by conquest and power, an endless cycle that left little room for joy or laughter. I suppose I have forgotten what fun feels like, she confessed quietly. Ethan's eyes lit up with excitement. Well, you're in luck. We've got tons of fun stuff on Earth. We can play games, go to amusement parks, or even watch movies. You could learn about our world instead of just trying to conquer it. Nara considered his words carefully. Could it be possible that this human boy was offering her something more valuable than conquest? A chance at understanding? She glanced at Commander Rax, who was still trying to recover from the chaos unfolding around them. Perhaps there is merit in your suggestion, Nara said thoughtfully. If I were to understand your kind better, it might aid me in my future endeavors. Ethan beamed at her response. Exactly. And I promise you'll love it. We can even make Mr. Squeakers part of our science fair project. Nara raised an eyebrow at the mention of Mr. Squeakers. The tiny hamster had been quietly observing everything from his pocket but now seemed intrigued by the prospect of being involved in their plans. Very well then, Nara declared with newfound determination as she floated back down onto solid ground beside Ethan. Let us proceed with this plan. As they began discussing logistics for attending the science fair, what costumes they might wear or how they would present themselves, Nara felt an unfamiliar sensation creeping into her heart, hope. Meanwhile, Commander Rax watched in disbelief as his queen engaged in playful banter with a human child while their elite guards stood frozen in confusion around them. Your Majesty, he finally spoke up cautiously, are we really going through with this? Yes. Nara replied firmly but without malice in her tone. We will attend this science fair together. The elite guards exchanged glances filled with disbelief. They had been trained for years for combat scenarios but never for an interspecies science fair. As plans began to take shape, costumes were discussed and ideas thrown around, the atmosphere shifted from one of impending doom to one filled with excitement and anticipation. Ethan couldn't contain his enthusiasm as he bounced on his feet. This is going to be epic. Imagine all my friends' faces when they see an alien queen at our science fair. Nara smiled despite herself. Perhaps this unexpected alliance could lead to something greater than conquest, a chance for understanding between their worlds that had never existed before. Little did they know that their journey together would not only reshape their destinies but also challenge the very fabric of what it meant to be a conqueror and a friend. As they finalized their plans for the upcoming science fair, a day that would change everything, they were blissfully unaware of how their lives would intertwine in ways neither could predict. A new path for the galaxy. The chaos that had erupted on the playground was unlike anything Queen Nara had ever experienced. Floating a few feet above the ground, she struggled to regain her composure while her bioluminescent markings flickered erratically between shades of green and purple. Her third eye twitched uncontrollably, and she felt a strange sensation in her throat, as if the very air around her was charged with confusion and disbelief. "Your Majesty!" Commander Rax shouted, trying to cut through the pandemonium. "We must initiate the orbital bombardment immediately. The child has—" "Silence!" Nara interrupted, her voice rising in pitch as she attempted to assert her authority. But deep down, she knew that this situation was spiraling out of control. The peanut butter sandwich had not only disrupted her invasion plans but had also introduced an unexpected element into the equation: humanity itself. Ethan stood nearby, his eyes wide with concern as he watched the alien queen struggle. "You really don't look so good," he said, his voice filled with genuine worry. "Are you sure you're okay?" Nara felt a pang of embarrassment wash over her. Here she was, a conqueror of 97 worlds, reduced to a state of chaos by a simple Earth food item and a child's innocent curiosity. "I am perfectly fine," she insisted, though her body betrayed her words as another rainbow bubble escaped her lips. "Maybe we should try that allergy medicine I have," Ethan suggested eagerly, rummaging through his backpack once more. "It worked for my cousin Bradley." "Do not approach me with more Earth substances," Nara commanded, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. But as she floated there, surrounded by bewildered guards and a curious child, she felt something shift within her, a realization that perhaps this wasn't just about conquest anymore. "Look," Ethan said earnestly, taking a step closer. "If you really want to conquer Earth, maybe you should consider what we value instead of just trying to scare us into submission." Nara blinked in surprise at his words. "What do you mean?" "Well," Ethan began, his excitement bubbling over, "we like creativity and friendship. We have things like science fairs where we share our projects and ideas. It's all about working together and learning from each other." Nara found herself intrigued by this notion. Could it be possible that there was more to humanity than she had initially thought? Instead of fear and domination, perhaps there was an opportunity for understanding, a chance to forge connections rather than destroy them. "Commander Rax," Nara said slowly, turning toward him with newfound determination. "What if we were to observe these science fairs instead? It could provide valuable insights into their culture." Rax looked taken aback by the suggestion but quickly composed himself. "Your Majesty, are you suggesting we abandon our invasion plans?" "I am suggesting we explore alternative methods for engagement," Nara replied firmly but without malice in her tone. Ethan's eyes lit up with excitement at the prospect of introducing the alien queen to his world. "Yes. You could meet all my friends. We could show you how cool Earth is." Nara hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. Perhaps this would also provide her an opportunity to gather intelligence without resorting to destruction. "Very well," she declared with newfound resolve as she floated back down onto solid ground beside Ethan. "We shall attend this science fair together." As they began discussing logistics for attending the science fair, what costumes they might wear or how they would present themselves, Nara felt an unfamiliar sensation creeping into her heart: hope. Meanwhile, Commander Rax watched in disbelief as his queen engaged in playful banter with a human child while their elite guards stood frozen in confusion around them. "Your Majesty," he finally spoke up cautiously, "are we really going through with this?" "Yes," Nara replied firmly but without malice in her tone. "We will attend this science fair together." The elite guards exchanged glances filled with disbelief. They had been trained for years for combat scenarios but never for an interspecies science fair. As plans began to take shape, costumes were discussed and ideas thrown around, the atmosphere shifted from one of impending doom to one filled with excitement and anticipation. Ethan couldn't contain his enthusiasm as he bounced on his feet. This is going to be epic. Imagine all my friends' faces when they see an alien queen at our science fair. Nara smiled despite herself. Perhaps this unexpected alliance could lead to something greater than conquest, a chance for understanding between their worlds that had never existed before. As they prepared for the upcoming science fair, a day that would change everything, they were blissfully unaware of how their lives would intertwine in ways neither could predict. Days passed leading up to the event. Nara immersed herself in human culture through Ethan's guidance. She learned about music, art, and even the concept of teamwork, something entirely foreign yet fascinating to her royal upbringing. On the day of the science fair, Nara arrived at Oakwood Elementary School dressed in a vibrant costume designed by Ethan, a blend of traditional royal attire and playful elements inspired by Earth's culture. Her bioluminescent markings shimmered brightly as she stepped onto the school grounds alongside Ethan. The children gasped in awe at the sight of their alien visitor. Whispers spread like wildfire among them as they marveled at Queen Nara's appearance. "Welcome!" Ethan exclaimed proudly as he introduced Nara to his classmates. "This is Queen Nara from another planet. She's here to learn about our projects." Nara felt a surge of warmth wash over her as she interacted with the children, each one eager to share their creations and ideas. For the first time in centuries, she felt something akin to joy bubbling within her heart. As they moved from project to project, watching demonstrations on how plants grow under different light conditions or how chemical reactions create colorful explosions, Nara realized that this experience was far more enriching than any conquest could ever be. By the end of the day, after countless smiles and laughter shared among new friends from different worlds, Nara stood before Ethan once more, her heart full of gratitude and newfound understanding. "Thank you," she said sincerely, looking deep into his eyes. "You have shown me that there is more to life than conquest or power." Ethan grinned widely. "And you've shown me that aliens can be awesome friends." In that moment, amidst laughter and joy shared between them, the conqueror and the child, they forged a bond that transcended galaxies, a connection built on friendship rather than fear. Little did they know that this simple act of kindness would ripple across both their worlds, transforming not just their destinies but also paving the way for peace between species who had once stood on opposite sides of an impending conflict. As Queen Nara watched children play around her, their laughter echoing through Oakwood Elementary School, she realized that perhaps true power lay not in conquering worlds but in embracing them instead.